Rain pounded the rooftop like it held a grudge. It was just after midnight when Harold James heard the knock. 3 sharp raps, calm, deliberate. Not the kind that begged for help. The kind that announced something final. He stood frozen in his kitchen, coffee cup halfway to his lips. The cabin was quiet except for the ticking wall clock and the wind slicing through the trees outside. He hadn't had visitors in months, maybe even a year. That was by design. Another knock. Slower this time. Like whoever stood on the other side of the door knew he was listening. Knew he was hesitating. And was enjoying it. He placed the cup on the table and walked toward the door, each step cautious, measured. His mind raced. Could it be the local sheriff? A stranded traveler? No, no one came out this far into the forest unless they had a reason. A very good one. He opened the door. There she stood. 30 years older, but unmistakably her. Long, black hair now streaked with gray. Her face had aged, sure, but it hadn't softened. If anything, time had chiseled her sharper. Wiser. Colder. But those eyes hadn't changed. Not one bit. Harold's throat went dry. "Hello, Harold," she said, calm as ice. For a moment, neither of them moved. Just the rain falling between them and the tension hanging like fog in the doorway. Harold finally breathed. "Sarah?" She smiled, but not the kind that greeted an old friend. It was the smile of someone who'd waited a long, long time for this moment. He stepped back, unsure whether to slam the door or let her in. She didn't wait for an invitation. She crossed the threshold without a word and walked straight inside, dripping water on the wooden floorboards, leaving muddy footprints like scars. Harold closed the door behind her, heart pounding. "You're alive," he whispered. She turned slowly. "Disappointed?" He looked away. "I didn't think you'd made it out." She stared at him. "You didn't check." Silence. The clock ticked louder. 30 years earlier, Echo Canyon, Arizona, 1995. The canyon had always been a bad idea. Too remote. No signal. No backup. But Sarah had trusted Harold. Back then, she trusted easily. Too easily. They had been in love, or something like it. Young, wild, and convinced nothing could touch them. The canyon hike was supposed to be a break from real life. Instead, it became the dividing line between before and after. The fall was an accident. One loose rock, one wrong step. She tumbled 20 feet, bones shattering on the canyon floor. Her screams echoed into the sky, but no help came. Harold had climbed down, looked her over, and panicked. Blood everywhere. Her leg bent wrong. Her breathing ragged. And instead of helping, he made a decision that would define both their lives. He left. Said he'd go get help. Said he'd be back. He never returned. Sarah lay in that canyon for 3 days. Long enough to know pain intimately. Long enough to understand betrayal. And long enough to decide that if she ever made it out, he'd pay for it. But she never spoke of what happened in those 3 days. Not to doctors. Not to police. Not even in the interviews when people called her the canyon survivor. Some stories, she kept for herself. Some revenge, took time. Present day, Harold's cabin. Harold sat down slowly, watching her from across the room like she was a ghost. "How did you find me?" he asked. "I wasn't looking for you at first," she said, removing her soaked coat and draping it over the chair. "I moved on. Built a life. Got stronger. But some wounds, they don't close. And I started dreaming about you again." Harold swallowed hard. "You had every right to hate me." "Oh, I did hate you," she said softly. I still might. But that's not why I'm here. He blinked. It's not? No, she said. I didn't come here to kill you, Harold. He let out a breath, but it caught halfway. She smiled again. That would be too easy. There was something unsettling in her tone. Like she held cards he couldn't see. He stood up, needing movement. You could have come to the media. To the police. Ruined me. I thought about it, she replied. But you weren't worth a headline. I wanted something better. Harold walked to the window, looking out at the endless trees. Rain still falling. No one for miles. Why now? Sarah tilted her head. Because someone else is asking questions. He turned. What do you mean? She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo, old, faded, creased down the center. It showed 3 people, Harold, Sarah, and a third man. Harold's face drained of color. Where did you get that? He found me, she said. 2 months ago. Said he was looking into what really happened in Echo Canyon. Said he knew you lied about something. He wanted answers. Harold took a step back. That's not possible. No one knows. No one, she cut in. You're sure? He was quiet. Sarah leaned in. Tell me, Harold. What did you leave behind that day, besides me? His lips parted, but no words came. I know there's more, she said. And I'm not leaving until I find out what it is. Flashback, The Canyon, 1995. Harold had lied. He didn't go for help. He ran because he saw something in that canyon that terrified him more than Sarah dying. A small metal case, buried under a rockslide. Something he wasn't supposed to find. But once he saw it, once he touched it, everything changed. He took it. Hid it. Left Sarah behind to die. But she didn't. And now, she remembered everything. Present day. You think I came here to confront you, Sarah said. But really, I came to see what kind of man you became. If you still carry the weight. If the guilt rotted you from the inside. He didn't answer. I see it has, she added. Harold finally sat down. What do you want from me? Answers, she said. And truth. All of it. And if I don't have them? She leaned closer. Then I make sure everyone else starts asking the same questions I did. A log cracked in the fireplace. Harold stood up, walked to a cupboard, opened it slowly, and froze. The case. It was gone. He turned sharply. Sarah was still watching him. You still had it, didn't you? She asked. He nodded slowly. And now it's missing. Yes. She smiled. I know. The room felt colder now. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, but the warmth didn't reach Harold. He stood frozen in front of the open cupboard, eyes locked on the empty shelf. The metal case, the one he had guarded for 30 years, was gone. Sarah didn't look surprised. I know, she'd said. Calm. Almost smug. Harold turned toward her slowly. What do you mean, you know? I know it's missing because I took it, she said, folding her arms. You what? His voice cracked with disbelief. I took it before you even knew I was here. She tilted her head. You think I knocked before stepping in? I watched you from the woods for 2 days, Harold. I know your routine. I know where you hide your past. Harold felt the floor shift under his feet. All this time he'd been so sure he was alone, that no one remembered. But she hadn't just come back to confront him. She'd been hunting. You broke in? He asked quietly. I entered, she said, voice icy. Let's not pretend you have the moral high ground. Harold dropped into the chair beside the table, rubbing his forehead with shaking hands. You don't know what you've done. I know exactly what I've done, Sarah said. I've taken back control. A long pause stretched between them. Then she pulled the case from her satchel and set it on the table between them. Metal. Weathered. Still carrying the red smudge from that day in the canyon, her blood. Harold stared at it like it might explode. Sarah leaned forward. Open it. He didn't move. I said open it. He reached forward with trembling fingers and unclasped the latches. Inside, everything was right where he'd left it. A bundle of old documents, a blood-stained map, and a faded photograph, the same one she'd shown him earlier. But this one had something extra. Writing on the back. Sarah picked up the photo and turned it over. You never asked me how I got this. Harold shook his head slowly. I don't want to know. Too bad, she said. Because he's still alive. 30 years earlier, Echo Canyon, Night 2. Sarah had stopped screaming by the second night. Her throat was raw, lips cracked, body wrecked with pain. She had slipped in and out of consciousness, fevered and freezing, dragging herself inch by inch toward a place where she could find shelter beneath a rock overhang. That's where she saw it, the glint of metal. Half buried. Something unnatural. She crawled to it, blood smearing across the canyon floor. A small case. Heavy. Sealed shut with a latch she didn't have the strength to open. But even in that moment, she knew it didn't belong there. Something about it pulsed danger. She didn't remember falling asleep. But when she woke up, the case was gone. And Harold was too. Present day, Harold's cabin. Do you remember his name? Sarah asked now. Harold didn't answer. He was part of the expedition team. You told me the canyon was clear. You told me it was safe. But it wasn't. That team disappeared a year before we ever set foot there. Only 3 of them were ever found. Burned. Bones shattered. But one was never accounted for. Harold finally looked up. You don't know what was inside that case. Then tell me, Sarah said. Right now. Harold exhaled like the air had been trapped in his lungs for decades. There was a research facility deep in Echo Canyon, he said. Hidden. Illegal. Government-funded but off the books. Experimental medicine. Psychological testing. Something went wrong. They evacuated. Or so they claimed. But people disappeared. And you knew this? Sarah asked. I didn't at first, Harold said. But when we found that case, I realized something. That hike wasn't an accident. I was told to take someone there. They didn't say who. They just wanted confirmation that the place was still active. I thought I could go, check the spot, come back, no harm done. Her eyes widened. You used me. He nodded, guilt thick in his throat. I thought it was just a location check. I never thought it would be. Deadly, she snapped. He looked away. Flashback, the third man. The man in the photograph was Dr. Michael Lorne. He had worked on the experimental treatments at the hidden facility. Rumors swirled for years that he had gone mad after being exposed to something, a neuroagent designed to unlock memory or prolong cognition. It worked, but not how they expected. It didn't preserve memory. It changed it. People reported false memories, lost time, entire days erased. And some started remembering things that never happened. But Dr. Lorne disappeared before the project was shut down. The government closed it quietly. No charges. No explanations. No survivors. Except Sarah. Present day. Sarah stood now, pacing the room. He found me 2 months ago, she said. Dr. Lorne. Older. Broken. Said he'd been hiding for years. Said you took something from him, something he wanted back. Harold looked pale. Why would he come to you? Because he remembered me, she said. From the file in the case. My name. My injuries. And that I was the only one who survived contact with whatever they were testing. Harold leaned back, face gray. You don't understand. That thing in the canyon, it's not done. Sarah turned. What thing? He hesitated. You mean the experiment? She pressed. No, he whispered. I mean him. Nightfall, outside the cabin. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Sarah had insisted on staying the night. She wouldn't leave without answers. Harold, now visibly shaken, agreed, reluctantly. But every hour, he checked the locks. Every sound made him jump. At 2:13 a.m., the power cut out. Sarah sat up on the couch, heart thudding. Harold appeared seconds later with a flashlight. This has happened before, she asked. He shook his head. Never. Outside, something moved between the trees. A shadow. Then another. Not fast. Not human. Sarah backed away from the window. Who else knows you're here? She asked. No one, Harold said. I never tell anyone where I live. She looked at him. You sure? He paused. No, he said quietly. I'm not. The message carved into the door hadn't faded by morning. In fact, it looked deeper. I remember her. Sarah stared at the words, her fingers still hovering over the jagged grooves as if they might vanish if she blinked too long. But they didn't vanish. They burned. Every inch of those 4 words was deliberate, carved by someone who wanted them to be felt. Harold stood behind her, silent. She finally turned. You're going to tell me everything now. Harold's shoulders slumped, like he'd been waiting for this moment and dreading it for decades. Come inside, he said. You need to hear it all. Not just what happened in the canyon. What came after. 30 years ago, 2 days after the incident. After Harold left Sarah in the canyon, he didn't go to the police. He didn't alert rescue teams. He drove, non-stop, to a private facility in the New Mexico desert, carrying the case with him. A man was waiting there. White lab coat. Thin-rimmed glasses. Cold eyes. Dr. Michael Lorne. He was the one who recruited me, Harold said, sitting at the kitchen table. I never understood why, not completely. Just that he needed me to access something in Echo Canyon. I thought I was doing reconnaissance. A location check. I didn't know Sarah would get hurt. Sarah folded her arms. But you left me. I panicked, he admitted. I thought if I brought the case back, they'd fix everything. They said they had the tech to rewrite memories. To erase what went wrong. I believed them. Sarah looked at him in disgust. Did they erase yours? No, Harold said, his voice low. They didn't. That was the trade. I kept my memory. My punishment was to remember what I did. Present day, inside the case. Sarah opened the case again and pulled out the photograph of the research team. She pointed to the man on the far left. Young. Clean-shaven. A stark contrast to the version she'd seen recently. This was him, she asked. Harold nodded. Michael Lorne. He was brilliant. But unstable. The project broke something inside him. What were they testing? Harold hesitated. Memory amplification. They claimed it could cure Alzheimer's. But they used volunteers, some against their will. People with trauma. Soldiers. Prisoners. It didn't heal their minds. It warped them. Sarah leaned forward. Warped how? They started remembering things they never experienced. Entire lives. Alternate realities. Imaginary people. And the longer the exposure, the more violent they became. She paused. Are you saying he's dangerous? Harold looked her in the eye. I'm saying. He doesn't know what's real anymore. The cabin, that night. They locked all the doors and windows. Neither of them said it aloud, but they both felt it. Someone was watching. Sarah barely slept. Every creak in the floor, every gust of wind made her sit up. At 3:27 a.m., she heard it, footsteps on the gravel outside. Slow. Intentional. She grabbed the flashlight and moved toward the window, heart in her throat. Harold was already awake, standing near the front door with a shotgun in his hands. They didn't speak. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then something slid under the door. Sarah crept forward and picked it up. It was a page, torn from a notebook. On it, scrawled in shaky handwriting. She doesn't remember what she did. But I do. Her hands trembled. I think he means me, she whispered. Flashback, the third night in Echo Canyon. Sarah's memory of her third night in the canyon was always fragmented. She remembered pain. The stars above her swimming in and out of focus. Something, whispering her name. But now, pieces began to return. She remembered movement, something dragging her from the open canyon floor into a nearby cave. A hand touching her wrist. A voice saying, "You're not supposed to be here." She remembered eyes, wild, unblinking. A man with shaking hands and a metal badge that read Dr. M. Lorne. He had saved her. Or thought he did. But that wasn't all. Present day, inside the cabin. I think I saw him, Sarah said slowly. Back then. I think he found me before I was rescued. Harold sat down. Then he must have believed you were the last piece. The final test subject. The only survivor of exposure. Sarah turned to him. And what if I was? Harold looked pale. Then he might want to finish the experiment. The tape recorder. Sarah hadn't noticed the old cassette player sitting in Harold's bookcase before. Dusty. Yellowed with age. She picked it up. Is this from the facility? She asked. Harold nodded slowly. I haven't played it in 20 years. Why? Because it's his voice, Harold whispered. Michael Lorne's. She pressed play. The tape clicked, and static filled the air, followed by a calm voice, quiet, clinical, detached. Subject S23 is stable. Lucid. She continues to remember incidents that never occurred. She describes a man named Harold James as her partner, though he was never part of the experiment. Her attachment appears genuine. Sarah's breath caught. She claims she was abandoned. Left to die. But our logs show no abandonment. Only one recovery. Her memory appears altered. Artificial trauma. Possibly induced. Further observation required. The tape ended in a harsh click. She stared at Harold. Did you hear that? She asked. They said you weren't really there. But I was, Harold insisted. I left you. That much I know. Sarah's voice dropped. Then why are there two versions of the truth? The forest, the next morning. They set out at sunrise, following Harold's old trail to the base of the canyon. If Lorne had come back, he would have returned to the site. Maybe he'd left something. A sign. A trap. About half a mile in, Sarah stopped cold. Pinned to a tree was another photograph. Old. Weather-stained. It showed her. In the canyon. Bleeding. Staring up at the sky. Taken from above. "Who took this?" she whispered. Harold didn't answer. On the back, someone had written. "You saw him, too. You just forgot." Revelation, a memory that doesn't belong. That night, as she lay awake in the cabin, Sarah's memories began to flicker. Not dreams, memories. Real. Vivid, she saw herself, running. Not from Harold. Not from danger. But toward something. A child. A little girl crying in the darkness. Mommy? Then blackness. She sat up in bed, sweating. Her hands trembled. She didn't have a daughter. She'd never had children. And yet, she remembered her. Back inside the case. Sarah returned to the metal case and tore through the documents. One folder was marked. Memory implantation, Stage 2 subjects. Inside. Reports, diagrams, and names. Her name. Her photo. Under the category. Experimental cohort, artificial memory seeding. She wasn't a random hiker. She was part of the project. Harold, she whispered. They didn't just alter my memory. They built it. Michael Lorne didn't knock again. He just stared through the foggy glass of the cabin window, his wild eyes unblinking. The rain slid down his face like tears, but his expression never changed. In his hand was a small, black cassette tape. On it, a label in faded red ink. S23, Session 9. Sarah couldn't breathe. Her body tensed as her memories flickered again, too fast, too scattered. She had the overwhelming feeling that she was both safe and in danger at the same time. The truth was a blur, and Michael Lorne was the only one who seemed to know the full picture. Harold stepped forward, slowly lifting the shotgun. But Sarah put her hand out to stop him. "No," she said. "Let him in." Inside the cabin, confrontation. Michael entered without hesitation. His clothes were soaked, but he didn't shiver. His hands didn't tremble. His entire being was focused, mechanical, like he had rehearsed this moment for years. "Put the gun down, Harold," he said, voice low. "You won't need it." Harold didn't move. "I don't trust you. I don't need your trust. Just your silence." Michael turned to Sarah, studying her face. "You still don't remember me, do you?" "I remember parts," she whispered. "Flashes. You dragging me into a cave. Telling me I wasn't supposed to be there." Michael nodded. "You were never supposed to be part of the field test. You were the control subject. But you wandered where you weren't meant to go." "I was following a trail," she said. "No. You were following a signal." The tape, Session 9. Sarah sat at the table. Michael slid the tape into the old cassette player and pressed play. Session 9. Subject S23. Post-Canyon exposure. Interviewer, Dr. Michael Lorne. There was a pause, followed by Sarah's voice, her voice 30 years ago. Calm. Childlike. "I saw the girl again. She was crying. I tried to help her, but her face kept changing. Sometimes it was mine. Sometimes it was my mother. Sometimes it was no one." Michael's voice followed, clinical and steady. "You said you remember things before they happen?" "Yes. And after they don't. It's like I'm in two timelines at once. Sometimes I don't know which life is mine." The recording stopped. Sarah's skin crawled. "I don't remember saying that," she said. Michael leaned forward. That's because after session 10, we started the memory resets. You've lived 3 different lives, Sarah. This is just the latest. Memory seeding, the experiment's secret. Michael pulled out a folder from his coat and placed it on the table. It was soaked, but the papers inside were sealed in plastic. He opened it to reveal a photo, Sarah, in a hospital bed. Electrodes attached to her temples. Machines surrounding her. You weren't just a victim, he said. You were the experiment. We seeded you with memories, false lives, to see how your identity would respond. The hike into Echo Canyon wasn't your first trauma. It was your third. Sarah's hands shook. You're lying. No, Michael said. The real lie is the life you think you had. You didn't have a boyfriend named Harold. You never worked in real estate. You never went to college. We gave you that life to see how your brain would adapt. Harold finally spoke. I met her. She was real. Michael looked at him. No. You were just the field agent sent to escort her. And you failed. You fell for her. You broke the rule. And when she got hurt, you left, because you remembered the truth, and couldn't handle it. Sarah stumbled backward, heart racing. No. No. This isn't possible. It's more than possible, Michael said. It's happening right now. Because in a few hours, you're going to start forgetting again. The countdown. What do you mean, forgetting? Sarah asked, eyes wide. Michael pulled a small vial from his coat, silver, glass, filled with a shimmering blue liquid. This is what's left of the original serum, he said. The thing that makes memory bend. Your exposure was deeper than anyone realized. Your memory isn't linear anymore. It loops. Every 72 hours, it begins to dissolve and rewrite. You lose the truth, and replace it with fragments. Sarah backed away. So. I've been living in a loop? Yes, Michael said. Every time you feel like something is off, every time your reflection looks unfamiliar, that's the loop beginning again. You remember pain that didn't happen. Or forget pain that did. Your body remembers what your mind can't. And how do we stop it? Michael looked her dead in the eye. We don't. Flashback, the missing child. Sarah's hands began to tremble again. The little girl, she whispered. I keep seeing her. Crying. I thought it was a dream, but I felt something. Deep. Like love. Like fear. Michael nodded. That was your daughter. What? She gasped. Before the experiment, he said. You had a daughter. They told you she died. But it was a lie. They took her from you, used her in the first round of tests. She was subject S-22. Sarah fell into the chair, her knees giving out. Tears filled her eyes. Where is she now? Michael looked down. I don't know. I've been looking for her too. The storm returns. A sudden burst of thunder cracked outside. The lights flickered. The wind howled. Harold peeked through the blinds. We've got company. Sarah stood. More agents? No, Harold said. Survivors. Outside, 3 figures stood at the edge of the woods, silhouettes in the storm. Each of them motionless. Watching. Michael turned pale. They followed me. Who are they? Sarah asked. Subjects, he whispered. Others who escaped the program. They remember fragments. They're unstable. And they're looking for you. Why me? Michael turned to her slowly. Because you're the only one who lived. You're the memory they all share. You're the key. The choice. Michael placed the vial on the table. This, he said, is the last of the serum. If you take it, your memory will stabilize, permanently. You'll remember everything. The daughter. The canyon. The betrayals. But once it's done, you can never go back. You'll have to live with the truth. All of it. Sarah stared at the vial, heart pounding. Harold placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to do this. Yes, she said softly. I do. She picked it up. What happens if I don't take it? She asked. Michael stepped back. In 12 hours, you'll wake up and forget this ever happened. Again. Just like last time. Sarah froze. The vial hovered just beneath her lips. The scarred man, barefoot, dripping with rain, rage, and desperation, took a step forward into the cabin. His voice was rough, raw. Don't drink it, he said again, slower this time. He's not what he says he is. Michael Lorne didn't move, but his jaw tightened. Get him out of here, he said to Harold, who hadn't yet lowered the gun. But Sarah. Sarah looked into the stranger's eyes and saw something she hadn't seen in Michael since the beginning. Fear. Real fear. The stranger. He looked younger than his voice suggested, maybe in his 30s, but worn beyond his years. His hair was patchy, his hands marked with needle scars. He wore no shoes. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. I'm here because I remember you. Sarah stared. From where? He stepped closer. Echo Canyon. You were there. With me. Before the fire. Her breath caught. What fire? Michael stepped forward. He's confused. Delusional. Most of them are. No, the man said. She was in the south tunnel. She was screaming. You dragged her out. Then you set it all on fire. Michael said nothing. Sarah turned to him. Is that true? Michael's lips parted, but no words came. And that silence told her everything. Flashback. The tunnel. It hit her like lightning, not a memory, but a sensation. The heat of fire against her face. The heavy weight of another body in her arms. The sound of crackling rock as something collapsed behind her. A voice, don't look back. Her own voice, I have to go back for her. Then, black smoke. And silence. Back in the present, Sarah collapsed into the chair, clutching her head. There was another girl, she whispered. In the tunnel. She was trapped. Michael finally spoke. Yes. The sacrifice. You weren't supposed to be down there, Michael said. None of the test subjects were. The memory loop began failing. They started wandering, and you followed one of them into the south tunnel. It collapsed. We thought you were dead. Sarah's hands trembled. But I wasn't. No, Michael continued. You crawled out. Half burned. Half conscious. And then you did something no subject had done before. She looked up, numb. What? You lied. You told us you'd never been there. You claimed the memory was false. A dream. You covered up what happened. Why would I lie? She whispered. Because, the stranger said, you left someone behind. And you didn't want to live with it. The buried truth. Sarah got up and stumbled to the case, tearing through the folders again. One of them, she'd overlooked before, marked only with her initials. Inside, a drawing. A child's drawing. A little girl, in a tunnel, flames all around her. The stick figure of a woman standing at the entrance. Watching. Not saving. Just watching. On the back of the page, she let me burn. Sarah dropped the paper. Her knees buckled. I remember now, she whispered. She wasn't a dream. She was real. Michael didn't flinch. Her name was Clara. Subject S22. She was your daughter. The ultimate betrayal. Harold's voice cut the silence. Wait. You're saying she remembered, but chose not to save her own child? Michael's voice was soft. She was drugged. Injured. Disoriented. But yes. She left Clara behind. And when she came back, she denied she ever had a daughter. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. No. I didn't forget. I made myself forget. Harold lowered the gun. You buried the truth to survive. Michael nodded. And then we buried it deeper with every cycle. The plan. Sarah finally turned to Michael. Why now? Why come back? Michael walked toward the table and picked up the vial again. Because the others are remembering. You're the only subject who ever stabilized after the loop. If we can extract your neural map, we can reset the rest. Save what's left of the survivors. The scarred man laughed bitterly. Save us? You turned our minds into prisons. Michael ignored him. You take this, Sarah, and everything will come back. All of it. The truth. The fire. Clara. Even the life you made up to replace it. Sarah stared at the vial. Harold said, and what happens if you don't? Michael looked at him calmly. She'll forget again. And this time, the loop may not restart. She may be lost completely. The final memory. Sarah turned to the stranger. What's your name? He hesitated. Jude. Did you know Clara? Jude nodded. She was kind. A little strange, but kind. She used to hum when she was scared. Said it kept the dark things quiet. Sarah put her hands over her mouth and wept. I used to tell her that, she sobbed. Jude stepped forward. She forgave you, you know. She told me. Said you were trying to save everyone else. Sarah looked up. Did she survive? Jude didn't answer. The serum. Sarah held the vial. It shimmered like liquid starlight. I want to know, she whispered. Even if it kills me. She lifted it to her lips. And Michael lunged. Harold fired. The gunshot echoed through the cabin. Michael collapsed. The vial flew from Sarah's hand, shattered on the floor. Blue serum spread across the wooden boards like veins. Michael coughed, blood in his mouth. You fool. That was the last one. Sarah crawled to his side. Was Clara still alive when the tunnel collapsed? Michael smiled weakly. You'll never know now. And then he died. Aftermath. The storm passed by dawn. Harold buried Michael behind the cabin while Sarah sat by the ashes of the fire. Jude helped her burn the case, the tapes, the documents, everything. Even the photo of Clara? Harold asked gently. Sarah stared into the flames. I'll remember her now, she said. In my own way. Jude came beside her. She might still be out there, he said. Some of us escaped. Not all of us came back wrong. Sarah stood. Then I'll find her. Harold blinked. You don't even know where to start. Sarah looked toward the horizon. No, she said. But she remembers me. And if she's out there, I'll make sure she knows I remember her too. Sarah stood still on the porch, breath caught in her throat. That humming, soft, familiar, echoing like a thread through time, was not imagined. She looked out into the trees where the silhouette had stood. The forest seemed silent again, but the hum still lingered faintly in her mind, like it had been sewn into her nerves. Clara. It was the same tune Sarah used to sing to her, long ago, before bed. A lullaby to calm the fears, to keep the dark away. She's out there. The words echoed through her like a pulse. Jude stepped beside her. You heard it too? Sarah nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. It's her. One last journey. Harold protested, but Sarah was already pulling on her boots and grabbing the flashlight. She could be alive, she told him. If there's even a chance, I have to follow it. Harold reached for her arm. What if it's another trick? What if they've left more traps? Sarah looked him in the eye. Then I walk into it with my eyes open. But I won't turn back. Jude offered her a second flashlight and nodded. I'll go with you. I know parts of the trail they used to hide from us. Harold hesitated. I'll stay here. In case she comes back around the cabin. Sarah turned, hand on the doorknob. She already did. The trail of memory. The forest was cold, quiet, and damp. Every footstep crunched against leaves and wet pine needles. Jude led the way through a trail he claimed he hadn't walked in years, one that always seemed to shift and vanish depending on who was looking. Sarah didn't speak. Her mind pulsed with fragments. Images she couldn't place. The little red boots Clara used to wear. The sparkle stickers she liked to place on her drawings. The humming, always the humming. As they reached a clearing, Jude stopped. This was the drop site, he said. Where they'd leave new subjects, or take the ones that failed. Sarah felt the air change. It got colder. She heard the humming again, louder now. The mirror tree. At the far edge of the clearing stood a massive, ancient tree. Its bark was etched with carvings and burn marks. Sarah stepped forward and saw her own initials scratched into the bark, S.D. I was here, she whispered. Jude nodded. They brought you here after the fire. You were unconscious for days. When you woke, they erased everything. Sarah reached out and touched the bark. Suddenly. Flash. She was kneeling by the tree, clutching a small blanket. A child was crying behind her. Mama, I'm scared. Don't make a sound, baby. She pressed Clara close. In the distance, voices, men shouting, boots crunching. They were hunting them down. Buried beneath. Sarah dropped to her knees and started digging. Beneath the moss and earth, her fingers found something, soft, rotten fabric. She yanked it up. It was a child's hoodie. Small. Torn. Faded pink. Inside the pocket, a note. Folded. Written in crayon. Her hands shook as she opened it. I saw the lights again. Mama said they come for the ones who forget. So I remember. I remember everything. I won't forget again. See. Tears welled up. She was trying to hold on. Jude whispered, they couldn't control her anymore. That's why she vanished. She escaped their story. And made her own. The facility revisited. The humming returned, pulling them deeper into the forest. Past the old ranger stations, beyond the burnt tunnel entrance. Then, like a ghost rising from the earth, it appeared. The Echo facility. Collapsed, half-buried, but still standing in pieces. Sarah's heart pounded. I know this place. Jude stepped closer. They said it was destroyed. But I always knew something remained. They stepped inside. Dark corridors. Vines growing through cracks. Rusted equipment. On one wall, a child's drawing, still taped in place. A son, a mother, and a girl holding hands. Beneath it, we will be okay. Sarah's chest tightened. Clara had drawn this. Left it for her. The recorder room. In the back chamber, behind a sealed vault door, they found it, a memory recorder, the original. Broken, but intact enough to boot once. Jude brushed the dust from the screen. It's searching for recent entries. Sarah leaned close as it blinked. Subject S22, Clara Dorn. Last log, 2 years ago. Playback, yes. She hit play. The screen flickered to life. A grainy video. A girl, around 12 years old, sat in the recording chair. Pale. Thin. But alive. My name is Clara Dorn. I don't know how long I've been here. But I remember my mom. I remember the fire. I remember the song she sang when I was scared. I hum it now so she'll find me. She looked straight into the camera. If you see this, Mama, I'm not mad. I know you were trying to save me. I just want to go home. Then static. Sarah's knees buckled. She collapsed into Jude's arms, sobbing. A voice in the dark. I left her, Sarah whispered. And she still forgave me. From behind, something creaked. A door. Jude turned sharply, flashlight raised. In the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Small. Female. Barefoot. A familiar face, older, but unmistakable. Clara. Sarah dropped the flashlight. Clara? The girl stopped. Tears ran down her cheeks. Mama? They ran to each other, colliding in a trembling, wordless embrace. Sarah pressed her hands to Clara's face, touching every part of her like she still didn't believe she was real. You're alive. You're alive. I kept remembering, Clara whispered. Even when they tried to take it. The final truth. Jude looked on silently, then turned his head toward movement in the hallway. Behind them, more survivors emerged. Men and women, some barely older than Clara, others in their 40s, 50s. All former test subjects. All escaped. We've been hiding, one woman said. We're the ones who remembered. Clara stepped forward. They built the facility to erase the parts of us they didn't like. The pain. The grief. But that's where we found each other. Sarah asked softly, why come now? Clara took her hand. Because the loop is broken now. You remembered me. That was the last piece. Redemption. Back at the cabin, Harold wept when he saw Clara. They all sat by the fire that night. Sarah, Clara, Jude, Harold, and the others. Clara sang the lullaby again. This time not in fear, but in peace. Sarah told her the truth. The full truth. I left you because I thought. Sarah started writing a book. Not to expose, but to heal. She titled it, Forest of Echoes. Clara went to school. Made friends. Slept without nightmares. And every night, just before bed, Sarah sang the lullaby again. Not because she needed to chase away the dark anymore. But because they had brought the light back. Together. Final words. Some stories are